What's going on, movie fans? This is the very first episode of the Real Takes podcast here on WSVC Radio. I'm your host, Dan Sisk. This is going to be a weekly podcast where I watch new movies and television that release over the course of the previous week, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on it. So I hope you'll join me as we share our love for movies and television. So I've got two new movies that came out this week that I went to go see in the theater. They are Venom: The Last Dance and Conclave. So we're going to be talking about both of those movies. There are chapter times in the video description where you can click ahead and see me talk about Conclave, or Venom spoilers if you want to listen to me talk about the spoilers specifically. But right now we're going to hop right into Venom: The Last Dance. So this is written and directed by Kelly Marcel. She is the writer of the banger 50 Shades of Grey, which everyone loved seeing. I haven't seen it, and I'm not going to. She co-wrote the two previous Venom movies, but this is the first time she's directed one. This obviously stars Tom Hardy reprising his role as both Eddie Brock and the voice of the Venom symbiote, but this time he's sharing the screen with Chiwetel Ejiofor, Juno Temple, Reese Ifans, and Andy Serkis. So, for context, I did not like the two previous Venom movies. I can totally see why some of you would. They're very goofy, they're very silly, they're very 90s, they are very, very antiquated in how they approach the comic book genre. You know, ever since 2008, where the superhero movie really evolved, obviously, with Iron Man and Dark Knight, the comic book movie has definitely evolved to the point of having a ton of different genre mashups and a lot of different, very sophisticated stories that are being told, whereas the Venom movies are just trying to be dumb, silly fun. And while I totally understand the appeal of dumb, silly fun, in the end, I feel the Venom movies kind of fail at that. So I did not like the first one. I did not like the second one. I felt they deviated from the source material to such a large extent that they proved to be kind of horrible, if we're being totally honest. I think a lot of fans really wanted the Venom movies to be hard R, and they wanted them to be a Jekyll and Hyde story with any of Venom, and instead we got a PG-13 odd couple story with humor for 5-year-olds. You know, and I ultimately feel that the hard R route was the way to go. But this is the trilogy we got. This is the third Venom movie. How they made 3 of these is beyond me, but here we are. And my thoughts on this Venom movie are the exact same thoughts I have for the other Venom movies. It's really, really stupid. It's really, really dumb, but there are a couple scenes where if you buy into the camp, you will really enjoy it. I think that you will, again, you know if you're the target audience for this, you know if you're going to enjoy it. If you didn't like the two previous Venoms, you're not going to like this Venom. There is a dance sequence in the middle of this movie with Mrs. Chen, the character from the first two Venom movies, that might be the dumbest thing I've seen in the theater all year, and that's saying a lot, because I saw Madam Web, and I saw Argyle, and I saw a slew of other remarkably stupid films in theaters this year, but this one scene may take the cake for that. It's mind-numbingly stupid. So the basic setup for this story, there really isn't a story, but I'm going to do my best to explain. The setup is, so Null, the symbiote god, he's basically this eldritch god from the comics who serves as the god of the symbiotes. This was never set up in the first Venom because the first Venom did a horrible job establishing the trilogy, but that's neither here nor there. So basically, Null was imprisoned by the symbiotes, and the only way that he can get out of his mysterious prison, what the prison is, we have no idea, and Kelly Marcel doesn't know either, but the prison can be escaped by Null if he has access to the Codex, which is a particularly strong bond that Eddie and Venom have. So the whole setup is that since Eddie died in the first Venom, Eddie and Venom essentially share one of these codexes, which can allow Null to escape. Null was used to advertise this film early on, and to be totally honest with you, why he was put in the marketing is beyond me, because Andy Serkis has maybe, and I'm being generous here, 6 lines, maybe 7, and they set him up to be this big, big villain, but he's essentially just used in this movie to set up the future, a future that I think we won't get, to be honest with you, because I think these movies are about to die out pretty fast due to the box office. But the movie is essentially a road trip movie, as Eddie and Venom are on the run from both the U.S. government, led by, specifically a task force, led by Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, and Null's forces from the planet Clintar, which is Venom's home planet. So it's basically a road trip movie, and it tries to be this really serious story of the bond between Eddie and Venom, but it also wants to be this really silly, dumb 90s camp movie. And it really just can't decide on the tone. The tone is all over the place, and as a result, the movie doesn't really have any idea what it wants to be. When the movie isn't leaning into the camp, those were the scenes that I liked the best. They were very dark. They were very sophisticated. They really sold me on the bond between Eddie and Venom, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed those scenes quite a bit. But then, the odd couple humor would start up, and I would just want to gouge my eyes out of my skull. And it proved to be really, really, really uninteresting to me. That's really all I can say without leading into spoilers. So I'm going to go into spoilers right now, because I feel this movie, you can't really talk about this movie without spoilers. So that's it for the non-spoiler review. In summary, if you saw the first two and thought that they were entertaining, you'll like this one. If you didn't, go see it. If you didn't, don't watch it. You might want to wait till it hits on digital, and then you can fast forward through the crap that you don't like. But if you like the first two, you'll enjoy this one. Go see it in theaters. Okay, so I'm going to start spoilers right now. You still here? Okay, so Venom dies in one of the dumbest scenes I've ever seen, where he basically sucks up all of Null's soldiers that have been sent there by Null. And he dies in this acid bath. And how the acid bath works makes no sense, because it needs to be retina scanned. And it just turns into this really overly convoluted scene that tries to wrestle any and all emotion out of the viewer as possible. But again, as someone who did not like the first two Venom movies, I felt there was little to no emotion. So when Venom died, I had no reaction to anything that was happening. My entire audience was dead silent also. I mean, none of them were into it as well. I felt that Tom Hardy's performance definitely was one of the highlights of this. He definitely commits. During the death scene, he sold it for me, even when the script didn't. And I think that speaks volumes to Hardy's performance. And the reality is, I just, in a perfect world, I think he would continue with a different writer and a different director. But this trilogy's over, and we got the 50 Shades of Grey writer writing all of these scripts, and we got the trilogy that came out of that. So nothing that we can do. We deserve the hard R version of this, but, we didn't get it. But really diving headfirst into the spoilers, essentially they're trying to set up Null as this big threat, and they want Spider-Man to clearly be involved, because I think we all assume that the upcoming Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland is going to tie into this, and there are rumors that Null will be the big villain of that film, because the movie takes place, or rather is being released in July of 2026, so it's going to come out between Doomsday and Secret Wars, the next two Avengers films, which are obviously multiverse stories. So the assumption is it's going to be another multiverse movie, therefore Null is the obvious villain of that, and they'll obviously try to work in a Tom Hardy cameo, or maybe even have Tom Hardy have a full-on supporting role. We'll see what happens. But I'm going to go and here's a hot take. I understand that a lot of you are going to disagree with me on this, but this is my show. I can say what I want. At the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, they set up Spider-Man to have a very grounded story. He was definitely no longer Iron Man Jr. like the MCU had portrayed him up to that point. He had evolved into the Spider-Man that we all know and love from the comics. And I think we were all really excited, myself included, to get a grounded Spider-Man story. Finally, after 3 movies where he's traveling the world, the first one he went to DC, the second one he went to Europe, and then the third one was this big multiverse adventure. I think we were all really looking forward to the new Spider-Man trilogy being a grounded story, where we brought in Vulture and we brought in Scorpion and we brought Donald Glover back to play the Prowler. and all of these different grounded stories. But here's what I honestly feel. You are not topping Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi, with his second Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 2, created the quintessential Peter Parker story. It is a perfect narrative. It's a perfect Spider-Man movie. It's the perfect Peter Parker movie. You're not making a better grounded Spider-Man story than Spider-Man 2. So my question to anyone who is dying for Spider-Man 4, Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, to be this grounded story, why are you clamoring for it so hard when in your gut you know it won't be as good as Spider-Man 2? That's my honest question to you. Why? From my perspective, the multiverse stories are going to end after Secret Wars. We're not going to get more multiverse movies after that. So from my perspective, I'd rather them lean into the multiverse now and have all of these fun crossovers with Tom Hardy and Null, and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are probably going to appear in this movie as well. But I'd rather get all of those stories in now while we can, rather than forcing in a Scorpion or Prowler story for Spider-Man 4 between Doomsday and Secret Wars, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. I would rather take advantage of the multiverse now and wait on the grounded stories, because again, in terms of grounded Spider-Man stories, you aren't topping Raimi. You're not topping Raimi. It's not going to happen. You can try, but you will fail. And honestly, I feel that's why the approaches to subsequent iterations of Spider-Man have gone the way they have. Tobey Maguire was the quintessential New York City friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So what did Amazing Spider-Man do with Andrew Garfield? They went the Dark Knight route. They went with a darker tone. And what did the MCU do with Tom Holland? They went international with it. They took him outside of New York. That was their approach to that iteration, to differentiate the stories. Plus, with all of these movies, they utilize different villains. Until the Venom reboot in 2018, you had each Spider-Man movie had a different villain from the last, no matter which iteration we were following. That's why we got Vulture, Mysterio in Homecoming and Far From Home, because Vulture and Mysterio had not been in the movies previously. So I'm totally cool with the multiverse approach that they are clearly going to take for Spider-Man 4. Whether the rumors are true and they bring in Null and they probably work in a Tom Hardy cameo, I would not like that, because again, I did not like this movie, and so as a result, I don't want them to continue that. But if it is, I'm still going to be really excited about it, because I'm not going to get more multiverse movies in my life. Let's just be real. Let's just be honest. The multiverse, for the most part, did not work out. A lot of these movies have been very poorly received by both critics and audiences. The box office is all over the place. Some movies are doing real well, like Spider-Man, like Deadpool, and a lot of them aren't doing well. So, because of that, I think the multiverse is not going to last beyond Secret Wars. I don't think it's going to be a thread that the studios are going to go back on. So I'd rather take advantage of it now. I want them to do more multiverse stuff now. And then once Secret Wars hits and we move on to Spider-Man 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many more they make with Tom Holland, I'm sure it'll be a ton, because he needs the work. He's not doing anything good with his career outside of Marvel. I mean, Cherry is still one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I'd do it now. And if it's Null, fine. I'm not that excited for that storyline after watching Venom 3. But I'm open to seeing what they do. That's pretty much it for Venom. Again, ask yourself, if you aren't topping Sam Raimi, why force another grounded Spider-Man story into the mouths of the audience? Why do it? Do something different. And you know what we haven't gotten before? An eldritch symbiote god as the villain of a Spider-Man movie. So it would be different. It would differentiate from not only the Tobey Maguire movies and the Andrew Garfield movies, but the other Tom Holland movies as well. And it would play into the next couple Avengers movies. So we'll see if Null is the villain. If he is, I would still be excited despite not liking this movie whatsoever. And if Tom Hardy is able to come along, fine. Outside of Venom, The Sony Spider-Man-less movies have been atrocious. Morbius and Madam Web are anemic pieces of cinema. But Tom Hardy put in the time. He co-wrote the last couple movies in this trilogy. He's been a supporter of all three of them. He's been the face of all three of them. The movies are him. I do think that his performance is quite good. I think he does a very good job in them. And I really feel that he's earned the right to not only fight Spider-Man, but by the end of the movie, obviously team up with him to fight Null, if that is what they're doing. But I do feel he's earned his time. I feel he's earned the right to fight Spider-Man. So for his sake, I hope he gets the chance to do it. So that is Venom 3. We're going to move on to Conclave. Now, this is a movie, again, it just came out in the theater. This is directed by Edward Berger, who directed All Quiet on the Western Front a few years ago on Netflix. I actually never saw that movie. I don't know if anyone has, please, this is getting posted on YouTube, so there's a comment section open. Please write in the comments if All Quiet on the Western Front is worth my time. It definitely looks like something I would like. I like war movies a lot, but that's what Edward Berger's done. And I was particularly interested in this going in because Edward Berger has gotten offers to not only direct the next movie in the Oceans franchise with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. They're bringing the whole cast back. But Berger also signed on to direct the next Bourne movie with Matt Damon. And the original Jason Bourne trilogy is probably the quintessential spy thriller series of the 2000s. I would argue that Jason Bourne is the American James Bond. He's awesome. Matt Damon is so good in those movies, and I am dying for a true continuation of that original trilogy after Jason Bourne, the legacy sequel from a few years ago, was pretty uninspired. But that was my interest in Edward Berger going in. This movie stars Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Isabella Rossellini. This is essentially about Ralph Fiennes' character, who is a cardinal. He organizes a conclave to help elect the next pope after the pope dies of a heart attack. So the vote becomes split amongst several candidates in the conclave. So it's Cardinal Lawrence's job. Cardinal Lawrence is Ralph Fiennes. It's his job to investigate various secrets and scandals about each candidate to see not only which one he should vote for, but to see which one is worthy of being the next pope. So this is a very, very slick and smart thriller. This is not the kind of movie that you can go in expecting big action set pieces and big secret meetings. This is definitely a dialogue-heavy movie, and I am aware that, sadly, I love them, but dialogue-heavy movies aren't super popular these days. I think a lot of audiences, particularly younger audiences that are potentially listening to this show, need a lot of action sequences and a lot of thrills. This movie does not have traditional action sequences and traditional thrills, but it definitely is a very well-written movie that puts you deep into the psyches of all of these characters and definitely gets you invested in who should be the next pope. The first 20 minutes are a little slow. The setup is pretty boring, if we're being totally honest. Berger doesn't do a great job of setting up the entire dynamic between the Cardinal Lawrence and the rest of the conclave. But once the initial votes come in and they have to start, executing the votes over and over and over, the tension starts to build. We start to dive deep into the various candidates, and the movie becomes far more interesting and far more compelling. It's one of the most beautiful movies of the year. The cinematographer is a woman by the name of Stephanie Fontaine. I'm not familiar with her work off the top of my head, but she did an incredible job. This movie looks incredible. The costume design, the locations that they chose, it's a very slick, very engaging package, and I definitely thought that the movie was very engaging from that point. In terms of the cast, Ralph Fiennes is very, very good. It is far from his best performance. For me, Schindler's List is definitely the peak of his career. However, I also loved him very recently in The Menu. If you haven't seen The Menu, please watch The Menu. He is incredible in that. He's very good here. He has a couple moments where he definitely has to be very vulnerable with his emotions, but he definitely is the movie. He carries the whole thing. He is projected to be a front-runner, actually, for Best Actor at the Oscars this year. And while, again, I don't think this is even close to being his best performance, I definitely think that this is the kind of movie where the Academy will watch and feel, you know what, it's Rafe's time. It's Rafe's time. Let's give him the award. And for that, I would be really happy because I love Ralph Fiennes. I would argue that he is the best actor on the planet who doesn't have an Oscar. I think there are better actors than him, but they've all won awards, and sadly, Ralph Fiennes has not. The other standout for me was Isabella Rossellini as the head nun. Her role is very, very small, but just like Isabella Rossellini's other movies, she definitely, the whole saying is there's no such thing as small roles, it's small actors, and she makes the most of her role. It's a very small role, but it's a very meaty role at the same time. She does the most with it that she can. She's very compelling every time she's on screen, and I really, really enjoyed her scenes. Stanley Tucci's just doing Stanley Tucci. It's nothing you haven't seen Stanley Tucci do before, but he's very good. Same with John Lithgow. Tucci and Lithgow are largely just there to share their various political opinions. Tucci is playing a liberal. Lithgow is playing conservative. So the bulk of their roles are basically contrasting the two ideologies to try to help bring home the point of the movie. And in that regard, Tucci and Lithgow do their jobs. I do not think it's awards caliber work, but Tucci and Lithgow definitely do what they are assigned to do. With regards to said themes, the theme of the movie is definitely, politics. Politics can easily be corrupted. And I think that theme was definitely very well explored throughout the entire film. However, because of that, I felt the ending, which is very neat and very tidy and very, wrapped up in a tight little bow, I felt the ending was a little underwhelming, if we're being totally honest. I felt the ending, while not bad, I was expecting it to be a little messier solely because the movie is about how politics are very messy. So from that regard, I felt the ending was a little unsatisfying, but the ending definitely surprised me with its final twist. I'm not going to give it away here, obviously, but it's definitely something that I did not see coming. And overall, this is a great movie. It's not one of the best movies of the year. I think in my year-long ranking, I put it at number 20, which sounds low, but I've seen a lot of movies this year, and that's definitely in the upper half. Conclave is a very good movie. If you are interested in dialogue-heavy thrillers, you will really enjoy this. If you are interested in filmmaking from a production standpoint, please watch this movie. This is a very well-produced film, from the directing to the production design to the costume design to the cinematography. Very, very well made if you're interested in film from that perspective. And if you're interested in great acting, this is a very well-acted movie. I don't think there's a lot of Oscar-caliber acting here, but that doesn't make the acting any the less impressive. So if you're interested in any of those, please go see Conclave. It's in theaters now. The box office, I saw the reports this afternoon. They weren't very positive. So obviously, not a lot of you are seeing it. And this is definitely a movie intended for older audiences, which I understand. But if you're interested in thrillers like I am and you're looking for something different, Conclave will definitely do the trick. So that's it for episode 1 of The Real Takes here on WSVC Radio. I hope you guys had a fun time, as fun as you can, listening to me ramble and rant. I know that it can probably get a little annoying, but, I definitely love this stuff, and I can't wait to continue the show. I'm not exactly sure what next week's episode will be, because the only wide release is Here, Robert Zemeckis' upcoming drama with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright. And that movie not only looked really bad, but the early reviews are very, very negative. So I doubt I'm going to see that movie. And as a result, I don't really know what we're going to talk about next week. But I'll find something to talk about, and we'll have a good time doing it. So until then, this has been Dan Sisk, and have a good one.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.